My name is Audrey. I'm 29 years old, a stylist working in New York. After 5 years together, my fiance Daniel and I decided to plan a wedding that was private, elegant, and exactly in the style I had dreamed of for half my life. But right before the big day, I discovered something that made my heart stop. That morning, I returned to the luxury hotel suite where I was staying to pick up the wedding shoes I had designed myself. But when I opened the door, there was Madison, my younger sister, standing in front of the mirror, twirling in my actual wedding gown. Her lips were painted with a pale shade of lipstick, her hair curled and pinned with a pearl comb identical to the sketch I had commissioned. Around her was the hair and makeup crew I had hired for myself. I froze. Madison simply turned, gave me a faint smile, as if what she was doing was perfectly natural. "Don't worry, you'll still have another dress. This wedding will be for both of us." Can you imagine? Spending your whole life preparing for one special day, only to be turned into a supporting act at your own wedding? If you've ever had a family member steal something that was rightfully yours, share that feeling in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next part because what happened afterward was far worse. And I had to do something no one expected. I slammed the door shut behind me, collapsed into a chair, and my hands shook. Not from surprise, not from anger, but because something deep inside me had shattered something that had endured for years and finally had nowhere left to hide. Madison had always been like that, not just today. Ever since we were kids running around the wooden house in suburban Connecticut, she had been the center of everything. Every glance, every indulgence, every word of praise always for her. And me? I was only mentioned when there was a problem to fix. I learned to be quiet very early. At 8 years old, I knew how to call the credit company to ask for an extension on my parents' card payment. At 12, I handled the family budget by clipping coupons from the weekend paper. At 17, I turned down a field trip to Boston because mom needed someone to watch Madison with the flu. Family comes first, my mother liked to say. But what she really meant was, "Audrey, you give in." I still remember the night I got the acceptance letter from Parsons School of Design. I jumped with joy, my hands trembling as I held the letter with the silver seal. I dreamed of walking onto campus, studying under top designers. But 3 days later, my mother walked into my room with another envelope. "Your sister also got accepted to Emerson College," she said gently. "But we can only afford one of you." I looked at her speechless. "You're smart, resilient. You can thrive anywhere. But Madison, she's sensitive, fragile. She needs this chance more." I nodded. I even forced a smile, pretending I was fine. I chose a small community college, juggling classes with night shifts at a tailor shop to pay tuition. Meanwhile, Madison got a brand new laptop, moved into a fully furnished dorm, while I crammed into a basement apartment, spending nights hunched over scraps of fabric. I never complained. I told myself, just push a little harder, and you'll escape this. But the older I grew, the clearer it became. Some things couldn't be changed, not with sacrifice, not with hard work. Because in my parents' eyes, I was never the child who needed protecting. I was the one who carried their responsibilities, the one who kept the family balanced, without being allowed to fall apart. In later years, when I began building a name for myself in New York's design world, I still sent money home to help mom pay credit debt. I covered Madison's online courses after she quit communications. I renovated the old house, installed new air conditioning, replaced the porch roof, never once hearing a thank you. And Madison? She drifted like a kite with no string. One moment an art major, the next a wannabe YouTuber, then an intern at a flashy ad firm her boyfriend got her into. I remember when she visited home once and found the Italian leather heels. I'd ordered my first gift to myself after landing a big contract. Less than 2 weeks later, they came back with torn heels and the stink of cheap perfume in the lining. I asked her. She shrugged. Why keep them if you're not using them? Mom sided with her. You're both girls. What's wrong with sharing? I stayed silent, like always. I taught myself to fold those hurts away like paper and lock them in a drawer. But this morning, when I saw Madison standing in the gown I'd spent a year designing, there was no key left to shut away the feeling. I had hand-placed every piece of lace, chosen each pearl bead for the embroidery around the waist. It was all part of me, my dedication, my dreams, the youth I never got to live for myself. And yet she stood there, smiling at me as if stealing someone else's dream was normal. I need this, she said when I asked why. Daniel is wonderful, but you've always had everything. I just want one moment to feel special. I stared at her. This is my wedding, Madison, not yours. She shrugged, unfazed, as though I was selfish for not sharing the only day in my life that was supposed to be mine. And my mother? When she found out, she didn't ask if I was okay. She only said, "You're the mature one, the one who knows how to compromise. Think of the family. Guests will be happier if both of you shine." I didn't reply. I stood up, walked to the closet, and took the gown off the hanger, ignoring Madison's cries behind me. I no longer wanted silence. No more concessions. And I certainly didn't want to live another day as a side character in someone else's story. I left the hotel carrying the wedding dress in my arms as if I was carrying what was left of myself. Manhattan streets bustled, people rushing past as if I was just another detail in the chaos. But inside, I was unraveling piece by piece. I had come to New York 9 years ago with nothing but a battered suitcase and a list of potential clients printed at a public library. I had nothing but my experience at a small bridal shop back home and a dream I barely dared to voice. In those first days living in a Brooklyn basement, I slept beside an ironing board, working and learning to breathe in a city that never waits. I started by altering clothes for off-duty models, cleaning storerooms for rental studios, and absorbing knowledge from veteran stylists whenever they let me stand nearby. Each dress I stitched through the night, each bridal gown I hand-set crystals on, each garment I returned because I couldn't afford the deposit, all of it became the foundation for who I am today. And then I met Daniel. He was an architect from Seattle, new to a big real estate project. We crossed paths at an opening ceremony. I was handling wardrobe for the executives. He was presenting the building's structure. I remember his eyes when he caught me in the wings, clutching a dress with a broken seam that a clumsy assistant had ruined. Without a word, he smiled and handed me a tiny sewing kit from his pocket. "Always keep one handy," he said. I learned that when I had to fix my suit pocket before my first interview. From then on, everything just flowed. Not rushed, not loud, just coffee shop dates, rides home after work, nights in my 14th floor walk-up eating takeout noodles, and talking about our dreams. Daniel never asked me to shrink to fit into his world. He let me be myself with calloused hands from work, with a mind brimming with ideas and mood boards. And perhaps, for the first time in my life, I felt I didn't need to sacrifice in order to be loved. When Daniel proposed on our balcony one autumn evening, under twinkling lights and the hum of traffic, I didn't hesitate. We planned a simple, warm wedding of about 40 guests, the people who truly knew and loved us. I had almost everything ready: a rented villa in the Hudson Valley, a live jazz band, a 3-tier cake from a boutique bakery I'd once styled for. Every detail reflected what I wanted: intimate, refined, unpretentious. But then Mom called. At first, it was just a suggestion. Let the family be part of it, to feel included. I laughed, thinking it was harmless. But then she called again, and again. "Grandparents will be disappointed if they're not invited. Your aunt and uncle from California already booked tickets. Madison is upset she hasn't had any say in the wedding. The guest list ballooned from 40 to 120. Before I could object, Mom sent me a contract for a large Manhattan ballroom, insisting, "It's just the deposit, you don't have to worry." Daniel asked if I was okay with how fast things were changing. I told him, "We can manage it," but deep down, I felt like I was losing grip on something essential. The night my parents came to New York to discuss details, I cooked dinner carefully. But before we could sit down, Mom spread out a neat stack of documents, a budget she and Dad had drawn up, including a line item for post-wedding media coverage, something I had never imagined. "We know some journalists," she said proudly. "Your wedding will be in the local magazines, maybe even the Manhattan Times wedding highlights." Opportunities like this don't come often. I gripped the chair, whispering, "I thought this was my wedding." Dad glanced at Daniel, then back at me. "You're being helped. Don't take it the wrong way. Everything your mother does is for your own good." I didn't answer, because I understood when my mother said help, what she meant was control. We left that evening with more than just tension. Daniel held my hand tightly in the elevator back to our apartment. He didn't say a word, but I could feel he was uneasy too, realizing things no longer felt like ours. And I understood more clearly than ever, my willingness to compromise had opened the door for all of this. By agreeing to let my family cover part of the cost, I had unknowingly signed an invisible contract, a silent bargain where the losses would always, inevitably, fall on me. About 2 weeks after the family meeting at my apartment, the first signs of something unusual began to appear, not loud, not obvious, but enough to make me uneasy. One day, I received a confirmation email from the bridal shop in Soho I had chosen. The message was short, simply stating that both dresses have been adjusted and are ready for the next fitting. I read it 3 times, then opened my older emails to check. I had only ordered one dress. There was never a second. I called the store. The young receptionist on the other end answered cheerfully. "Oh, yes, Miss Audrey. We tailored the dresses according to both sisters' measurements, you and Miss Cause." Madison. Same day order, same fabric, same style. I gripped the phone, my chest tightening. "Excuse me," I said softly. "Who confirmed that with your shop?" "Mrs. Elaine Carter. She said it was a request from both brides." I hung up, heat rising under my skin. I opened Instagram, something I rarely used except for work. Messages from friends had been sitting there since yesterday, but I hadn't read them carefully. "Co-brides? Audrey, is this real? Madison looks stunning in that white gown. Are you two getting married at the same time? A twin sister wedding? Magazines will definitely cover it." I tapped on Madison's account. Her feed displayed a photo of her in the bridal shop fitting room, twirling slightly in front of the mirror. Behind her hung a velvet red curtain, light shining to highlight the Ferstel satin folds. Below was the bold caption, "Can't believe it, we're going to be co-brides. Number sister wedding, number double the love." Hundreds of likes and comments poured in. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers left congratulations. Many tagged me, as if this were a project Madison and I had planned together. I didn't know how long I sat at my desk. My wedding sketches lay in front of me, the fine Italian tulle I had carefully chosen still untouched. Yet it felt as if someone had taken scissors and cut straight through my chest, cold, numbing. Daniel came home at dusk. As he took off his coat, he said, "Babe, the resort called today. They asked about some details for the two brides' ceremony early this morning." I looked up. "What?" "I was surprised too," he replied. "I thought they made a mistake, so I told them I'd check with you. But then they emailed me. There's an attachment with a schedule, floral arrangements, even a seating chart, all labeled Helena and Madison's wedding ceremony. I hurried to open my laptop. The PDF file displayed every line clearly. 2 bridal suites, 2 archways, 2 makeup teams, one side with my name, the other with Madison's. I never agreed to this, I said hoarsely. Daniel placed his hand on my shoulder. I know, but clearly someone is interfering. I collapsed into my chair, gripping the mouse until my knuckles went white. The next day, I called the event planner. My mother had introduced a woman named Valerie, who had handled church functions before. I had never spoken directly to her, only through forwarded emails from Mom. "Hello, Audrey, so glad you called," Valerie said brightly over the phone. "Your mother approved the plan yesterday. I just sent the final draft to the invitation printer." "I never permitted a two-bride wedding," I said, trying to keep steady. There was a pause on the other end. "Oh, but I received an email from Mrs. Elaine, clearly, confirming it was the wish of both daughters. That both Audrey and Madison were excited about a twin ceremony. And you didn't confirm that with me? I truly apologize. She told me not to bother you because of your busy schedule with shoots and design work. You thought wrong." I hung up. Sweat dampened my neck even though the air was cool. I turned to Daniel. "I've been forced into a script I never agreed to." He nodded. "And everyone thinks you're the one behind it." I scrolled through the flood of messages from friends, relatives, colleagues. Some curious, some criticizing me for not sharing the spotlight with Madison. Some expressed disappointment, saying I had kept it secret. A fellow stylist even hinted, asking if this was my new marketing campaign. All I felt was emptiness pressing against my ribs. I opened an old text from Mom. It was short, a single line. "Don't make this tense. I trust you'll choose what's best for both sisters." No permission, no concern. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, erased it. In the end, I sent nothing. I needed to think. And I needed to find a way to reclaim my role as the bride before everything slipped away. The following morning, just as I finished brewing coffee, my phone buzzed relentlessly on the kitchen counter. The first text came from Ashley, a top model I was styling for a major French beauty brand campaign. "Audrey, I just saw the piece on New York Social. Is it true you're doing a double wedding? It sounds like a hidden PR stunt. What should I say when reporters ask about you?" I froze. What piece? I quickly searched my name. Within seconds, an article appeared on the homepage of a local entertainment outlet, shared thousands of times. Two sisters walk the aisle together. Audrey Carter, renowned New York stylist, hosts a double wedding that's taking social media by storm. The photo showed Madison in a white gown, twirling, before the mirror with the caption, "We're going to be co-brides." My name was tagged underneath, as if I had endorsed it. The article quoted a family insider claiming, "The Carter sisters had long wanted to do something special to honor sisterhood on their big day." I set my coffee cup down, my hand trembling. Nearly a decade of work, my reputation for professionalism, careful taste, refined styling was being twisted into a cheap social media stunt. Before I could react, an email from my agency's communications team arrived. Subject: urgent need confirmation on personal event media coverage. The message was brief but cold. "Audrey, partner brands are concerned about the personal image of our lead stylist in the current project. If there is any PR campaign underway that has not been disclosed, clarify today. If not, confirm immediately so our legal team can ensure no impact on active contracts." I sank onto the floor. Never in my career had my professionalism been questioned. I had hand-sewn seams, polished models' shoes, even run through snow to deliver a dress to a set on time. And now everything was at risk because of a circus called co-brides. The phone rang again. It was Morgan, the image manager for influencer Rose Klein. with whom I had just signed a contract 2 weeks earlier. Hi, Audrey. Several outlets are calling our office about your upcoming wedding. They claim there's an insider source insisting it's a bold marketing concept combining fashion and family. My voice cracked. There is no campaign, Morgan. This is a misunderstanding. An unauthorized interference. Silence for a few seconds. Then she spoke carefully. I understand family issues can be complicated, but Rose is entering a global expansion phase. We cannot allow any distractions to derail her media direction. I bit my lip, swallowing the urge to sigh. Give me a few days. I'll clear this up. I hope so, she said, then hung up. I sat there gripping my cold coffee cup, a heavy stone pressing down inside me. Daniel walked in, noticing the color drained from my face. What happened? I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the article, then looked at me. They actually did this? I nodded. Not only did they do it, they made me the star of a joke. He sat down beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. Do you want me to call your spokesperson? We need to manage the damage. I shook my head lightly. I want to do it myself. Because if I don't stand up now, I'll always be drowned in a story written by someone else. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to the communications department, explaining everything, that I had never agreed to a sister wedding, that I had no involvement in any family-related PR campaign. I attached screenshots of texts and emails from Mom and the event planner. Next, I wrote a simple press statement, no excuses, no blame, just the truth. I, Audrey Carter, independent stylist, confirm that the upcoming wedding is solely between myself and my fiancé, Daniel Mason, and does not include any co-bride element. The circulating information is false and was carried out without my consent. I hit send. A deep breath left my chest, like breaking through ice. Within hours, the correction began circulating from official accounts. A few colleagues texted support. Ashley's agent even messaged, "I still trust you to hold your principles. Thank you for clarifying." But the relief didn't last. That evening, Madison posted a new Instagram video. Crying into the camera, she spoke about media pressure, the pain of being rejected by her own sister, and the dream of sharing a special moment with her closest family. I sat in the dark, watching comments flood in by the minute. Poor Madison, why is Audrey so selfish? If sisters don't love each other, who will? I had once told. My self-silence would make things pass. But the more I yielded, the more the truth was twisted. And I began to understand. Madison didn't want to share my moment. She wanted to take it just as she always had. And she chose the whole world as her audience. I visited Grandma late one afternoon, after canceling all appointments and silencing my phone. Evelyn's apartment sat on the 12th floor of an old Upper West Side building, windows opening to Riverside Park, with a wine-colored sofa still covered in lace as it had been 30 years ago. The room carried the scent of lavender, old paper, wool fabric, and something warm, personal, as if time inside moved differently than the rush outside. She was sitting by the window, needle trembling slightly in her hand, eyes still focused on every stitch. I froze at the doorway, saying nothing. Grandma looked up at me, a faint smile spreading across her face lined with age. "You came," she said. I figured it was only a matter of time. I sat down on the low wooden chair across from her, the one I used to sit on every summer as a child. She set her embroidery frame aside and poured me a cup of Earl Grey tea. Every gesture was as gentle as it had always been, as if the chaos outside had never touched this room. "Have you seen Madison's video?" I asked, my voice hoarse. She nodded, setting her teacup down. "Yes, I saw it. I don't understand. How can she twist everything so fast?" One minute people were criticizing her, the next they pity her like she's the victim. Because she's trained her whole life for that, Grandma said calmly. And the adults in this family let it happen. I lowered my head. Her words cracked something inside me, wrapping up all the years of being overshadowed, dreams stolen, treated like the stand-in. I know, she went on, and I've seen this coming for a long time. Ever since your mother was young. I looked up. Elaine also had a sister, she said slowly. Louise. They were the same age, but Louise was always the one who got the short end. Eventually, she left home and never came back. Elaine just carried on as if nothing happened. I went still. I had never once heard Mom mention anyone named Louise. I don't want that story to repeat, Grandma said, resting her hand on mine, her gaze deep, serious, but not cold. So long ago, I prepared for this. She rose slowly and walked to the wooden cabinet in the corner. Opening the bottom drawer, she pulled out an old leather-bound folder and placed it on the tea table between us. Since you were 25, she said, I transferred half the ownership of the Fifth Avenue penthouse into your name. The other half is still mine. But when I'm gone, that part will also go to you. I said nothing, just reached for the folder. Inside were property deeds, notarized transfer documents, legal stamps, everything in perfect order, as if they had been waiting all this time for me to claim them. That apartment was originally your great-grandmother's, Grandma said. I don't want it falling into the hands of people who only know how to take. You've worked hard enough. You've endured long enough. It's time you had a shield of your own. I gripped the folder tightly, my throat closing. And this, she added, pulling a thick envelope from her cardigan pocket. The family trust. You are the official heir. You alone will control the entire trust once I'm gone. Madison and your mother know nothing about it. And if you need to, you can use it to make them stop. I laid my hand on the envelope slowly. My eyes stung, though no tears fell. Partly from emotion, partly from the shock of finally having someone on my side, not for reputation, not for gain, but simply because she believed I deserved it. You don't have to do anything with it right now, she said softly. Just keep it. When you feel the time is right, open it. When you believe the moment has come, use it. Otherwise, let it be. I nodded, squeezing her hand tightly. Thank you, I whispered. It's not because I'm kind, she replied, but because I've seen too many capable women like you pushed into the shadows. You don't need to destroy anyone, but you must hold on to what's yours. On the drive home, I didn't head straight to my apartment. Instead, I crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, drove along the river with the windows down, the wind tugging at my hair. The folder lay heavy in my tote bag on the passenger seat, weighty like an unspoken declaration. I still didn't know exactly what I would do next, but for the first time in 30 years, I had something I'd never possessed before, a choice, and no one would take it from me. I didn't sleep that night. The breeze drifted through the living room window, carrying the damp scent of late-season dew, circling like a question without an answer. I sat alone in my apartment, the soft kitchen light spilling across the table where Grandma's documents were spread out. Beside them lay the legal papers from the attorney I'd just hired to handle the situation. The words were cold, precise, but they offered clarity. Maybe this was the only way I could keep the rest of my life intact. At 8 a.m., I sat in the office of Melinda Ross, a commercial attorney specializing in event contract disputes. She looked to be in her 40s, sharp-eyed and unshakable. The first thing you need to do, Melinda said, is terminate every verbal agreement your mother made. You must take back full legal control of the ceremony. I nodded, sliding over a scanned copy of the old contract that Valerie, the event planner, had signed under Mom's direction. She skimmed it, then looked up. Miss Carter, in this document, Elaine paid the deposit. but the signatory is still listed as representative of the bride. That gives you grounds, with sufficient evidence, to execute a new contract that nullifies the old one, especially if the recent changes were made without your consent. My hands clenched. Melinda continued, I'll draft a new contract. All decisions will require signatures from either Audrey Carter or Daniel Mason, with electronic verification, and every change must have dual certification. I'll also send a warning letter to the planning company. If they keep following your mother or Madison's instructions, we'll sue them for violating your personal rights. I exhaled. Thank you. I need to keep everything in my hands, even if it's just for one day. Leaving the office, I called Kelly. She was the only one who had seen everything from the start, my maid of honor, my friend from that first sewing class at the small shop, the one person who never stepped aside to please Madison. Finally calling me, she said as soon as she picked up. I've finished the timeline, a whole chain of interference, complete with messages, screenshots, posts. Whatever you need, I've got it. I smiled faintly. You're always the superhero. Don't flatter me. I'm doing this for you, and because this wedding is yours. No one has the right to turn you into a side character. By noon, Daniel and I were grabbing a quick bite at a little place in the East Village. He looked tired, but his eyes were steady. Together, we reviewed the guest list, cutting names added just because Mom insisted. Last night I called Reggie, Daniel said. Old classmate, retired Marine, now head of security for a gallery network in Brooklyn. I glanced at him, surprised. You want security? We need people to make sure your mother and Madison can't waltz into the venue. Reggie has a small team, discreet but extremely effective. They'll wear suits like the other guests, but all will be wired. Anyone crossing the line gets escorted out. No arguments. I nodded slowly, a flicker of reassurance. Piercing the chaos. That afternoon, I checked my email. 4 new messages from Valerie, all marked urgent. One said Mom had discovered I canceled the old contract and was furious. The last one was practically a scolding letter. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Mom. What the hell are you doing? She shouted the moment I answered. You're humiliating this family. Relatives are talking. Do you know Madison cried herself sick? I stayed silent, listening to her ragged breathing. Stop being selfish. Everyone thought you'd behave properly. And now you've canceled everything I arranged? You're cutting us out of your own wedding? If you don't fix this, I'll withdraw every penny of support. Don't expect us to show up at that ceremony. I closed my eyes. Not from hurt, because I had already predicted every word. Then don't come, I said, my voice calmer than ever. And I don't need your money. I never did. She went quiet, a silence more chilling than yelling. Then she hung up. I set the phone down, hollow inside, but not wavering. I opened my laptop, updated every wedding vendor with new access instructions. Only Daniel and I could approve details. Each portal was secured with fresh passwords generated by my lawyer. Every login now required 2-step verification. I pinned Kelly's timeline to the wedding board in the living room. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, holding a glass of wine. We're getting married, he said, pride shining in his eyes. I looked back at him, then down at the box containing Grandma's folder still resting on the table. Yes, I said. And no one is taking that day from me. That morning, Manhattan's sky stretched pale gray, clouds drifting like they too were holding their breath. I walked into the Le Couronne Hotel lobby at 8 a.m., where the ceremony was to be held. The security team, dressed in dark suits, was already in place, positioned between silk screens and reception tables decked with white peonies. Reggie, Daniel's friend, approached, nodding. Everything's ready. My team is in position as mapped. Guest verification begins at 8:30, And as you requested, if anyone lacks a lanyard with the code, they'll be held in the waiting area. I thanked him, then headed straight for the bridal suite. Kelly was already there, checking the gown, the jewelry box, the bouquet kept cool in a glass vase. "You seem unusually calm," she said, adjusting the lace on my shoulder. "Because I've prepared for every scenario," I replied evenly, "including the one where another bride shows up." I didn't answer, but the look in the mirror was enough for Kelly to know I no longer feared that. At 9:15, I sat in the makeup chair, foundation just finished, when my phone buzzed. A text came from Kayla, a college friend on the guest list. "Audrey, your mom is at the front desk. She's saying today is the special Carter sisters' wedding. There's even a cameraman following her." I glanced at Kelly, who had just read it on my screen. She dropped the lipstick in her hand and exhaled sharply. "It's starting." I stood up, pulled the veil back, and walked out of the room without saying a word. From the second-floor hallway looking down into the grand hall, the scene unfolded like a cheap movie produced by my own family. My mother, in a pale satin dress, was holding Madison's hand as she led her into the reception hall. Madison wore a white gown trimmed with gold lace, clearly a poor imitation of the one I had designed for myself. She clutched my father's arm, face glowing, smile stretched wide. "Ladies and gentlemen," my mother declared into the microphone, her voice echoing through the hall, "today we celebrate the wedding of our two beloved daughters, Audrey and Madison. A rare occasion, a double wedding, symbolizing the bond of family." Scattered applause followed. Some guests whispered to each other. Others pulled out phones to film, snap photos, or live stream. The rest looked utterly confused. I descended the staircase with steady steps. My lace-trimmed gown brushed against the marble stairs, the click of my heels cutting through the air. Each step toward the center stripped away another layer of the false atmosphere. Madison turned, her smile faltering. My father's face blanched. Mother clutched the mic, ready to continue. I raised my hand, and one of Reggie's security staff passed me a microphone. I didn't look at my mother or my sister. I looked straight at the guests, my friends, my colleagues, the people who truly belonged there. "Thank you all for coming today," I began. "I have only one clarification to make. Today is the wedding of myself and Daniel Mason. There is only one bride, and that bride is me." The air froze for several seconds. Madison's eyes widened, her face drained of color, then she screamed. "What's wrong with you? This is a shared wedding. You agreed to this." I turned toward her, my voice calm. "I never agreed to any of this. Everything you've said, your posts, your photos, your announcements, was forced on me, and I do not accept it." My father stepped forward, his voice sharp. "We can discuss this privately, not here." "You just stood on stage and misrepresented your daughter's wedding," I replied, meeting his eyes. "And now you want privacy? Everyone here deserves the truth." My mother yanked the mic from me, her voice trembling with rage. "You're humiliating this family. Do you think anyone will believe you after everything in the media? Everyone already knows about this sister wedding. Don't think you can deny it now." Reggie stepped forward, placing himself between me and my parents. "Mrs. Elaine, Mr. Richard," he said evenly, "under the security agreement, I am required to escort you out of the ceremony area if you continue to disrupt." Madison shrieked. "I'll sue! This is fraud!" "I have the right to stand beside my sister." I stepped closer. "You do not have the right to wreck someone else's life just to be noticed. You do not have the right to call it sharing when it is stealing. And most of all, you are not the bride." A few guests clapped softly. Others lowered their heads, hiding awkward glances. Madison broke down crying, screaming incoherently. My father steadied my staggering mother as security led them to the private family room exactly as in my backup plan. I turned back, handed the mic to the officiant. "Now we can begin." The piano began to play, slow and warm. I stood still for a moment, drew a deep breath, then walked toward the altar toward Daniel, whose eyes never left mine. No one stepped between us. No one could steal that moment away again. The music flowed on, each note softening the chaos that had just erupted. I moved slowly down the flower-strewn aisle, locking eyes with Daniel. In them was nothing but peace and certainty. But before I reached the end, a crash from behind startled the room. Madison had broken free, shrieking as she saw me nearing the altar. She lunged forward, dragging her gown, like a ghost clinging to a nightmare, screaming, "This is my wedding! You can't do this!" I have the right to stand there. But before she got more than 3 steps, Reggie and 2 guards restrained her firmly without violence, but with enough force to stop her cold. "I'll sue! I'll tell the press! You're a traitor!" Madison spat, thrashing wildly. I didn't turn back. I faced forward, where the event coordinator struggled to keep a professional smile. Kelly stood beside her, eyes sharp, holding a folder thick with documents. I mounted the steps, paused at the mic. The commotion faded as I spoke. "My apologies for the interruption. Perhaps it's time to make a few things clear." I turned toward Valerie, the event planner, hiding behind a floral column, her face pale. "Valerie, please come up here." She hesitated, then shuffled forward. I looked at her, then at Melinda, my lawyer, seated in the front row, holding a sealed folder. "I'd like to invite my attorney, Melinda Ross, to speak." Melinda stepped forward, opened the file, and spoke with crisp authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, under the contract signed on the 28th of last month, the entirety of this wedding, including venue, logistics, security, and expenses, has been paid for from an account in the name of Audrey Carter. All organizational decisions are valid only with the signatures of Miss Carter or her fiancé, Mr. Daniel Mason. Any third-party interference without such consent has no legal standing." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Valerie quickly nodded. Yes, that's correct. The current contract is valid. And I apologize for earlier confusion. All conflicting instructions came from unofficial sources. I continued, voice even but firm. To avoid further misunderstanding, let me be clear. Today's wedding belongs to myself and Daniel. There is no co-bride, no sister ceremony, and no parallel arrangement recognized. Scattered applause rose from the back. Some guests nodded, their doubt melting into agreement. I was about to step down when a familiar voice cut through the room, gentle, yet powerful enough to silence every breath. "One more matter must be clarified." Grandma Evelyn slowly entered from the wings, cane in one hand, Kelly supporting the other. She wore a deep blue silk dress, her wrist adorned with the vintage stone bracelet I had admired as a child. The room went still as she ascended the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying without a mic, "I am Evelyn Carter, grandmother to Audrey and Madison. I have never interfered in my granddaughter's wedding, but today I must do something necessary." She turned to me, her eyes warm yet resolute. Then she handed a leather-bound file to Melinda. "I will disclose a portion of my will, notarized and certified in Manhattan, naming Audrey Carter as the rightful heir to my assets, including 50% ownership of the Fifth Avenue penthouse and the entirety of the Evelyn Legacy Trust." She looked down at my parents, frozen in place. "I am not doing this to show favoritism. I am doing this because I have witnessed too many years of Audrey being sacrificed for the sake of so-called family stability. And now, I give her the power to protect herself." The hall stayed silent for a long beat. Then whispers spread. Those who had doubted me now sat still. Those who had once favored the sister wedding straightened in their seats. And Madison, still restrained, could only scream meaningless words through her tears. I moved toward Grandma, knelt, and took her hand. "Thank you." She squeezed mine. "No need to thank me. Just live true to your worth. That is enough." Daniel stepped up, helping me to my feet. I looked across the room. No more protests. No more defiance. The silence was not discomfort, it was acknowledgement. I took Daniel's hand, turned toward the minister waiting by the altar adorned with white orchids. "We're ready," I said firmly. And this time, there was no one to stop us. No hands reaching in. No other white dress beside me. Only me, the man I love, and a wedding that truly belonged to us. 3 days later, an article appeared on the cover of Verité Fashion Weekly, a respected fashion journal I had collaborated with since my earliest career days. The headline read, "The Bride Who Dared to Stand Against Control, Audrey Carter in the Manifesto of a Modern Woman." They called the wedding a turning point, not because of the gown I designed myself, nor the Ecuadorian orchids pinned in my hair. They wrote about the moment I held the microphone in front of hundreds of guests, in front of my own parents, and declared, "This is my life. No one else gets to write it for me." The piece was shared more than 2 million times in under a week. Excerpts circulated on major fashion accounts. Fellow stylists sent messages of solidarity. Several international brands reached out with long-term collaboration offers. But none of that meant as much as the voices of friends, the ones who had stayed silent before now, finally speaking up. Cousin Myra, the one who ignored me at last year's Christmas party to chase after Madison, sent a long message. "I never realized how serious this was. I'm sorry I stood on the wrong side. I'm more proud of you than ever." A text from Uncle Sam and his wife, who had always bowed to my mother, was simple. "You are an example for this entire generation." We should have listened sooner. Even my former sister-in-law, the ex-wife of my cousin, who had a reputation for being distant, left a note under the post I shared about my wedding. "Some people are not born to stand behind. You were born to walk firmly on the path you choose." Meanwhile, other undercurrents were breaking. After the incident at the wedding, Madison lost her contracts with 2 local fashion brands. An accessories label that had used her image in its spring campaign quietly deleted every post. Her Instagram account, which had nearly 300,000 followers, lost a third of them in just 1 week. Every new post was flooded with mocking comments, tagged with number "bride not bullied" and number "Audrey deserved better." I had never intended revenge. I didn't speak out. But social media has its own way. And the truth, when it's clear enough, needs no defender. As for my parents, only 3 days after the wedding, Evelyn's attorney sent them formal notice suspending their right to use or manage the penthouse. Spending from the family trust was frozen, pending review. My phone rang that Wednesday morning. It was my mother. I didn't answer. She left a 2-minute message, her voice cracking. "Are you trying to destroy this family? I was wrong, if I pushed you this far. But you can't turn your back on your own blood over one wedding. You have to think of Madison. She's fragile. She has no one but us." I listened, but I didn't reply. Daniel looked at me as I set the phone down. His eyes held no judgment, only quiet respect. "You don't have to forgive right away," he said. "I'm not forgiving," I answered. "But I'm not seeking revenge either. I'm just stopping." That afternoon, I walked alone through Bryant Park. The late autumn air was so crisp it sharpened every thought in my head. I sat on a wooden bench under a blazing red maple, opened an old notebook I used to carry on styling jobs. The first page held the rough sketch of a wedding dress I drew at 21, back when I worked part-time in a sewing shop. I had taped a small photo of me and Madison there when we were little, wearing paper dresses, playing pretend weddings in the living room. I peeled the photo off. I didn't tear it. I just removed it, gently, like a quiet goodbye. Underneath was a line I had once written. "One day, let them celebrate you for who you are, not for the role you play. I smiled, not sad, not regretful, just certain I was exactly where I belonged. That same day, Women of Voice magazine interviewed me over Zoom. They asked a question that made me pause for several seconds. Do you think you hurt your family by choosing your own path? I answered, family is not a place where a child's silence is accepted just because she's used to giving in. Family is not where it's decided who gets a voice and who doesn't. I didn't choose to hurt anyone. I just chose to stop letting them hurt me. On the other side of the screen, the interviewer nodded. That story spread quickly through women's forums, self-help groups, even morning television shows. They called me a symbol of healthy boundaries, a woman who didn't lose her softness while learning to say no. And in the quiet of that evening, as I set down a cup of ginger tea, the doorbell rang. It was Evelyn, my grandmother, wearing a beige coat, holding a small box. I brought you some cinnamon bread, she said, and a few things I think you should have. I invited her in. Inside the box were old photos, some design drafts she had drawn in her youth, but at the bottom lay a cream-colored card handwritten in her elegant script. My dear granddaughter, no matter how twisted the world becomes, always keep your own line straight. That's how one lives a full life without bowing, without regret. I kept that card on my desk for weeks, a reminder that I wasn't alone, and that I had never been wrong to stand up for myself. We moved into the penthouse in mid-December, when the city was stringing Christmas lights along the streets. The golden glow reflected against the 15th floor windows, making the apartment feel suspended in drifting ribbons of light. Daniel carried boxes of books into his new office, while I set up a reading nook by the window overlooking the park. This apartment had once been a place I only visited on holidays, whenever Grandma invited me for tea or birthdays. As a child, it felt like another world, where everything was in its place, and light fell just right to soften every restless thought. Now it was home. Not just because the legal papers said so, but because it was a place I could live as myself without anyone barging in to dictate who I should be. I spent days planning the project I'd dreamed of since my student days, sketching patterns in a rented room, opening my own design studio, creating custom garments that blended traditional craftsmanship with modern vision. The studio was called Lineage Atelier, a name I chose after crossing out dozens of others. Not flashy, not fussy, just true to the spirit I wanted to preserve. Lineage is not a chain, it's material to create something new, free, and beautiful. Daniel helped design the interior. Kelly handled communications. In the beginning, we worked from the small living room, spreading sketches across the floor, eating instant noodles, talking about seams as if they were life paths. I rented a floor in an old Soho building where I'd interned 10 years earlier. Not for nostalgia, but because I wanted the place that witnessed my start to become the foundation of something lasting. The opening came on a warm spring afternoon. String lights twined around the doorway, a hand-lettered sign in pale brown ink. Inside, linen, silk, and French lace hung from brass hooks, the sunlight through the windows making it all seem alive. Grandma Evelyn sat in an armchair by the window, her ivory cardigan draped over her shoulders. Her face glowed, as if this room were an extension of her own heart. I knelt beside her, gently holding the hand that had sewn my mother's wedding dress, that had pieced together the springs of her own life. "You are the reason I can stand here today," I whispered. She smiled, then pulled a small velvet box from her coat pocket and placed it in my hand. "This was your mother's," she said. "Then mine. Now it's yours." I opened it. Inside was a classic cut diamond ring, modest in size but sharp in brilliance, set in detailed platinum, not the kind of jewelry to flaunt. More like a silent affirmation, no need to shout, yet impossible to ignore. This ring, she continued, doesn't represent restraint. It's a mark of a woman who stood tall even when her family turned away, of someone who refused to be defined by others. I couldn't speak. I only nodded, like a vow that needed no words. The following week, I hung a small photo in my studio office. Evelyn in her youth, standing in her old queen's sewing shop, wearing a white blouse, scissors in hand, looking straight into the lens. Beside it, a wooden frame engraved with the words, "Real love does not demand unconditional sacrifice. It requires respect and a place where you can be yourself." Daniel often came home after me, carrying fresh bread from the corner bakery. We ate simple dinners, talking about the building he was designing, the clients I was meeting, and the projects I turned down because they asked for a style like Madison's. Madison no longer appeared much online. Her old photos drifted to the bottom of feeds, replaced by newer names. I heard she moved to the suburbs with a new girlfriend. I didn't blame her. I didn't think much of it. Maybe everyone eventually faces themselves sooner or later. My parents made no further attempts to reach me. I didn't block them, but they didn't call. No New Year's card arrived. The silence was strange but not painful. Some voids, when left alone, turn into the very space you need to breathe. One afternoon, while I was fitting a client at the studio, the bell rang. Kelly opened the door. An older woman stepped in, holding a vintage gown that needed alterations. "Miss Carter?" she asked. "I read your story. I don't need a stylist. I need someone who understands that beauty isn't about pleasing others." I smiled, draped the measuring tape over my shoulder, and invited her to sit. Because maybe the most precious thing I learned wasn't in the sketches or the lace, but in the journey of stepping out of someone else's shadow and lighting my own path by myself. So what do you think of my journey, from a bride nearly erased by her own family, to a woman who stood tall and built her career with her own hands and heart? I once believed love meant sacrifice, that keeping peace meant silence, submission. But real love doesn't make you smaller. It gives you room to grow, to be yourself, to be valued for who you are. My story isn't just about a stolen wedding dress or twisted words at an off engagement. It's about redrawing boundaries, breaking imposed expectations, and choosing a future not written by anyone else. And what about you? Have you ever felt bound by those closest to you just because they thought they knew what was best for you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story because sometimes healing begins with speaking the truth. And if you'd like to keep walking with me through stories of family, of complicated ties, and of those moments when we dare to step out of the shadows into our own light, hit subscribe. Because behind every family photo are untold stories. And sometimes, in the things no one dares to say, we find ourselves.